Hello, hello, hello. We were talking off camera about Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde. That sums up my day, quite honestly. But we are delighted to be back for another special coffee chat. Now, last week we had part one of this of what we're talking about today on Brice's Esoteric. This week we are back with the amazing co-host Brice from Esoteric Atlanta, the beautiful Cindy from Sacred Garden Yoga, and we did get a lot of comments last week about how beautiful you are, Cindy, and Jay, adorable cute Jay from Gnostic TV. And loads of other places. And last week we started off a topic, all of you, about something we all get asked a lot about, and finances and fear of money and being in that low vibration and feeling like you're out of control. And we all know, I think all our listeners know the reasons for it. But actually this morning on my dog walk, I was listening to an amazing podcast with Roseanne Barr and JP Spears, and they were talking about the coffin of your comfort zone and about how easy it is to stay there and think you can't get out of your comfort zone. And I really thought this just ties in so nicely to people's fear around financial stability, particularly at the moment, because let's just say the dark controllers is what I like to call them, are doing a lot to raise that vibration. So let me kick off with you, Cindy, because Cindy, you've got so many talents, and you did a lovely explanation last week about how the vibration of fear and lack is linked to the root chakra. But what does that raise for you when we talk about the comfort zone, the coffin of your comfort zone, and how it relates into people's fear of lack of money?
Well, when we think about the comfort zone, obviously we know the comfort zone. That's what actually makes it comfortable, and we get used to being in it. And sometimes we get so used to being in it that we don't really mind being in it so much. And I think that's very much a mindset thing, and that's one of the things that one of my mentors talks about when he talks about the comfort zone, is that we just simply get used to being in it to the point where we don't even really want to make change anymore, because we know what's there. We know what's inside of our comfort zone. But I think what happens eventually to some of us, and it's not going to happen to everyone, some people are perfectly happy there and they'll spend their life there, and that's where they'll be, and they'll be okay. But I think what happens to some of us is we get an itch, or we get this other calling, or we get something that's coming from deeper inside of us that says, wait a minute, there's actually something bigger. There's something more. And I think that internal hunger, or that desire to want that bigger thing, is what motivates us to get out of that comfort zone. We get tired. We end up making, as a matter of fact, this person that I'm talking about, was listening to one of his podcasts today, and he was talking about how we eventually have to actually make a decision. We have to decide that this is not my life anymore. This is actually not what I want. And I don't really see myself spending the rest of my life this way. And that initial urge needs to happen for us to be willing to step outside of our comfort zone. And then when we actually make that decision, then we have to cut through all of the fears that come through that, because then you're like, okay, well, now I'm going to have to face some of the things that we were talking about, like face some of these ancestral, perhaps some of these ancestral beliefs, or maybe we face the fear of getting too big. I think that's one of Marianne Williamson's quotes from a long time ago. I think from A Course in Miracles or something. She says, it's not, our biggest fear is our own light, is our own bigness. And that is a deepest fear for some people, is actually being too big, or because then you have to hold the energy of abundance. Because, I don't think necessarily that receiving abundance, it's not that difficult, but then it's holding it. You have to raise your container to hold something bigger than what you did before. And then that can be extremely uncomfortable, because then perhaps that means that you have to make yourself more visible, or there's the responsibility of having more. And how you're going to manage that or what you're going to do with that. So I think, one of the fears is just the fear of being bigger, the fear of being brighter, the fear of being more, and expanding your container to actually hold it. Because I've seen that a lot too, where people will be doing really well with abundance or with everything, with their business, and then suddenly it's almost like they subconsciously shut it off, because it's like, no, this is too much. This is me having to be too big. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with being that big. And that there's definitely, a deeper subconscious fear with that, because with that comes exposure, and people are actually going to really see me, or if I get all this stuff, then there's a greater possibility of me losing it. Then what then happens if I lose everything? So there's so many different layers that come in with that fear. But I think that's one that sometimes we don't think about, is when we do start to step out of our comfort zone, is that we have to actually increase our capacity to hold more and to stay there.
Oh, I love everything you said there, because it's so true. I mean, Jay, I'm just working around on the screen, Brice. Jay, do you think, based on what Cynthia was saying as well, that when people step out of their comfort zone, and today we're talking about financially wise, it raises a lot of insecurities about friends, circumstances, situations that they'd have to let go of?
Yeah, it does so much. I mean, well, so there's the environment, right? Like around the friends and family that we've grown up with, and the conditioning, which we spoke about last week, which is, you'll only get what you need, kind of thing like that. But then there's that aspect of people generally, or like, when they're around those circles, they're not necessarily going to listen or get help from the ones closest to them. They want to see outside of it. So there's like, when people talk to them, there's like this already way of listening. So for example, like if my mother says something to me, even though it may be the best advice in the world, my natural instinct is, oh, here she goes again. And I shut down exactly what's being trying to be shared with me. So I think, this is why I always encourage people too, when it comes to comfort zones. If you are thinking about getting out of the comfort zone, I would recommend you don't really go to anybody that's really that emotionally attached to you, because you're not going to listen to them for the most part. I mean, this is real life. You're going to tend to have a block just because of all that goes along with that. You know what I mean? The relationships, right? So there's that. And I also think too, we've been trained in comfort zones, meaning that we've been trained that we got one day to celebrate our existence, our birthday, if you would, so we can be comfortable in that day. We got a few days, depending on faith, you know what I mean, that we can celebrate our religious beliefs. So we're trained in that way. Those are our comfort zones where we can let go. So I think if we can start, like me and April, we don't celebrate anniversaries, birthday. We celebrate every day. I mean, if we celebrate life, then life celebrates us. So we don't really limit ourselves to that. And I'm not saying that from like, don't celebrate your kid's birthday or the ones you love, but I'm saying simply, if you start to celebrate every single day, you celebrate life, life celebrates you. Otherwise, you go to this high of one day maybe, and then boom, it starts to crash, and that's the comfort zone. So I think people would, if they can learn to realize or be open to the fact of realizing that it's a beautiful life, and every single day is truly a gift, and every single day can be your birthday, every single day could be your Christmas, your Hanukkah, whatever it is your thing is, but it can be that for you. And I hear a lot about that. Oh, this is the special week where if you do this, this is where you get everything you want. I'm like, why 1 week? You know what I mean? Why does it only have to be 1 week? That just I can't process that as even logic, because I'm an optimist, but I'm also pretty logical and I approach things, and I just can't process. Well, why are we only given 1 week? Why are we only given 1 day? What's wrong with that scenario? So I think if we start to think about that, break out of that comfort mentality, that's where you start to see things, what real possibilities are.
I love it. Brice, there's so much to this about holding your vibration, your frequency, about the skills of, about what can lower that, and also very much about what can raise that. How does that link into the fear of finances, the fear of losing it? I think is a very big thing that Cindy brought up.
and when Cindy and Jay were both, first of all, Jay, I kept thinking about the life of Pi. I think Cindy, we've talked about that story in a book that turned into a movie where the father was like, just take on like he had been every religion. He was like, just add Judaism and you got every day as a holiday. You know, it's true. It's life is meant to be lived. And the thing that keeps coming back to me, and this is coming from my yoga background, and I think Cindy will understand this, is patterning. So what tends to happen is our brain, the actual organism in our head, is designed to recognize patterning, whether you are conscious of that or not. That's how you survive, right? That's how we survive in the world, is we recognize different patterns. Well, those patterns then tend to, as the Yoga Sutras call the body, the mind field. They tend to then, as we know, the vibration of thought then makes its home into the fascia, the muscle, the essence of our anatomy. So people walk a certain way, and that can be inherited patterning, inherited karma. It can be because of an emotional injury that they start to pick up different patternings in the way their body walks. And so with that being said, we're looking at how powerful the mind is. So I loved how Cindy said you have to make that decision. It's kind of like when you go to AA, the first step of AA is admitting you have a problem. All right. Like my uncle used to say, every time he went on a diet, the first thing he's got to do is admit that he's a fat ass. Like that's the first thing he's got to do, is admit that there's an issue, that there's a problem. And so now we have to go on that adventure of changing, of course correcting. And in doing that, even though you've recognized that there's a faulty wire, there's maybe a boo-boo as in your system, like, right, there's still the patterning of that though within the whole mind field of the body and whole psyche of the body. This is the whole point of yoga, right? And so the process then comes of you changing the way that you're observing the patterns, and you're changing your pattern of thought, which then works its way through the body. And that's why a lot of times things like spiritual growth, healing can be quite painful, because changing that patterning can physically hurt sometimes. And we see that the yoga practice changes that. Like it works, either you bring the mind first and the body changes, or you change the body and then the mind starts to change. And so if we see it that way, and we know, we make the decision to change, it's just like you know, I saw there's this great thing that's floating around. It's not a meme, and it was like a discussion on Reddit or something. I don't even know if it was Reddit, where somebody was it was a musician was talking about motivation, and excuse my language, he basically said fuck motivation. Motivation doesn't work. Motivation only lasts a little bit. What you need is discipline. That discipline to be consistent. The days when you don't want to practice the piano, you do it anyway. The days you don't want to practice, you do it anyway. The days where you're feeling that doubt, where you're feeling that old patterning pushing up against you, and that friction starts to be uncomfortable, you still work on it. You have that discipline, because what do they say? That everything you want in life lies just outside of your fear, right? It's just. And you're right. And we see it all the time, don't we, Cindy? In the yoga class, people will come to us and it's like the devil they know is so much better than the devil they don't know. So no matter how rough their life might be, no matter how much they're dealing with, no matter how much they want to change, when that change starts to happen and it's uncomfortable, they run right back to where they came from, because they know that they understand that anxiety, they understand that depression, but this over here they don't know. And so when that uncomfortable and so just being aware of that, and just being aware of watching my original teacher in America, David Garrigues, used to call it the artful dodger. Like your mind will artfully try to dodge the hard stuff. Right? It will die in the most clever ways possible. And I see it when I teach Mysore, and we have people in like a really intense part of like second series. All of a sudden, out of the blue, they got to go to the bathroom. All of a sudden, out of the blue, they need to go fix their hair. Right? Like and so if you start to notice, and that's just an example, if you start to notice where you become resistant to the resistance, then you can then start to really work through that. It's like when you go to the gym and you lift weights, you know, you're building that resistance to that resistance. Sorry, it's thundering out here. Something if you guys just heard that was loud, but it's working that muscle, right? It's like training that new pattern to come in. And once that new pattern comes into the body and everything in your system shifts, you feel it. You notice that you're now more open to holding that new lifestyle, if that makes sense.
100%. I mean, I love the way that Joe Spencer talks about that the whole time, is when people are saying they can't meditate and things. It's like all these distractions will come up, like I need the loo, I need a cup of coffee, I need to scratch my head, I need to scratch my bum. You know, it's hysterical, because this is what and often we inherently lean towards comfort, as you started off by saying. That is where a lot of people lean to, and that is where they stay. And if you're happy with that, that's fine. But what about some of the triggers? And I'll start off and we can go around the table. For me, one of the big triggers is if people are judging of other people that have abundance. So my personal belief is that there is no lack of abundance in the world, that there is infinite abundance that's available to all of us. That's just my personal belief. I know a lot of people feel differently, but I have a very strong belief that if I'm abundant, that's not me taking away from anyone else. That's me flowing that abundance through the universe. So Cindy, what would be some of the signs that people could look out for, that they might have a hidden, perhaps, lack mentality around abundance that they might not be consciously aware of?
Well, that one that you just said, that is probably one of the biggest ones, is because that is how the shadow reveals itself, right? Is it reveals itself through how we judge others. So if you are judging other people who have financial wealth, then there is a shadow component within you that is asking you to look at your own belief system about that. Well, why do you judge that wealth? What is your actual relationship with money? And, part of it could be that, you tried to get wealthy, or something happened and things just kept going wrong. And then you just decided to give up, and then you see someone else succeeding at it. And then it reminds you of your own insecurities and your own failures. And, perhaps it reminds you of the fact that you don't feel worthy enough. That might not be the way that you say it to yourself, but that's usually the underlying tone behind it all, is the lack of self-worth. And it's the self-worth component that actually helps to increase your capacity to hold more. And if you increase your self, the way that you think about yourself and that you are worthy of receiving, then when you look at other people, you won't be so judgmental. You can see, oh, well, most likely they worked for that on some level. And even if they didn't work for it, and even if they inherited it, so what? That's their life. And this is what I'm going through right now. And so how can I align myself, instead of judging others for, having more or whatever? How can I align myself to where I feel worthy of also receiving those things as well? Because it's usually insecurities that pulls up our triggers. And so, yeah, I would say the biggest one is what you said right there is, if the Kardashians trigger you, or, all those people that just flaunt their wealth, why does it trigger you? Why do you care how they're choosing to spend their money? Where is your inner judge coming from, and how is that actually just a reflection of your own insecurity? And those are hard questions to ask. That's what we were talking about last time. It's much easier to make fun of the Kardashians or any of those people that we might tend to make fun of. It's much easier to make fun of them and to blame them, instead of asking, well, why do I feel like I need to respond this way for me to feel better about myself? And so it's just a big work on your own insecurities, and willing to actually do that work.
I so love it, and I couldn't agree more. And I'm at the stage where I can really notice when those emotions and those feelings come up in myself, and I have a laugh. Now, Jay, I'm sitting here drinking my lovely Asea mood drink, because this really works for me, and trust me,
I noticed you were exceptionally happy today. That's good.
Well, it's been a Mercury retrograde day for me. I'm laughing about I won't bore people with what my day's been like so far, but suffice to say the mood's working. Now, I think what Cindy said leads really nice onto you, because you and April have been incredibly successful in multiple businesses. and your recent business that you've literally taken by storm by really stepping out of the box and doing it your way is the Asea business that Brice and I are lucky enough to be part of and part of your team as well. How's that been for you, and how does that fit into for this discussion? Because that can raise a lot of issues when you're doing it your way, when you've got this wealth and abundance that's coming in from passing it forward and 5D economy. Talk us through how that experience has been for you and what lessons you'd like to pass on to others.
Well, you know, first of all, thank you for that. And then the one thing is really just, I think when people have an issue with, like, you know, money with other people, if you would, the thing is that my inherent belief system is you have an issue is because that's what you want. So instead of trying to figure out, well, they got that, like Brice said so eloquently, what are the disciplines they did to do that? You know what I mean? What were their disciplines? Like, what did they do to get that? Find out that scenario versus just, you know, they got it or whatever. Because I believe in what you say, Catherine. I believe it's abundant to everybody. Our thing was when we started Asea, and really any businesses, we go right to the top of everything. So we look at it very pragmatically. Like, if, you know, Cindy's got this yoga center or studio that we want to create here in Florida and she's blowing it up and successful, you know, I want to try to find a way to talk to her. Be like, can you help me understand what you did? You know what I mean? How did you do that? That's the mentality. Because again, the biggest thing is realizing if that something like that bothers you because someone else has got more than you got. Again, I really believe it's because you want, what they have, and that's okay. That's what makes us human. It makes us just deal with it, and we've all had those emotions come to us, and it's just how you reconcile. But if you can break through those things, is looking at them as like they're a possible way shower. Your faith, your universe, your God, whatever you believe in, keeps putting that person or that scenario in your face consistently. So, and if you can look at that as not to punish you, but your opportunity to address it. And I mean real opportunity, like, okay, hey, you know what? Maybe there is a way. And if I just pull back my own ship for a minute and just ask someone and call up Catherine and be like, can you tell me what you did? You know what I mean? And then really approach it from that perspective. Chances are that person's going to be like, oh man, I've been waiting for you to ask, but they don't want to impose. You know, because they know they're there for a reason, but they feel guilty too, because a lot of times that person who's got the wealth, you know, and they're talking to someone close that maybe doesn't financially there yet, they don't know what to say. And so then that kind of sucks for the other person, because if you think about it from the flip side, you know, when you have that and you've been successful, you know, who are you going to share it with? There's only so many people, you know what I mean? For the most part, there's a small percentage of people that allow you and give you the space to share and celebrate that with. And that's almost like kind of not fair from both sides. So if people can start to take a look at like, okay, someone got wealth. Yes, they got wealth, they got stuff, but they've also got now the guilt that goes along with that. You know what I mean? Like, they can't share with people. They can't go to sometimes a lot of their families or their loved ones or their best friends and be like, you know what? I just closed the biggest deal. I just made $100 million today. What are they going to say? Who are they going to celebrate that with? So, you know, if people can look at it from both sides of that coin, realize that we'll never take any of this with us. We don't know ultimately where we end up going at the end of the day. So let's enjoy it while we can. Understand someone's got something, they got to deal with that. Someone doesn't have something, they got to deal with that. If we can dive in, this is how we've really activated the principles of the 5D economy. Is let's figure out, you know, if you got the resources, you know, if someone there is ready for it, let's help them become abundant. You know what I mean? Whether it be through Asea, whether it be through different things, but really kind of talk to them, be like, hey, what do you want? Look, I figured this thing out. Like, what are you desiring? What do you want in this world? Maybe I can help you. If I can't, maybe I'll help you find someone. And you start that motion going. And that's what we do, is we just like, what do you desire? You know, I can't, I'm not the one to help you, but Brice is, you know what I mean? You start that, then all of a sudden, what we found out by utilizing that kind of technique, if you would, is that a lot of the resistance, a lot of the jealousy started to drop for people, because it was like, you know, you come from that place. So, you know, it's going to be work in progress for everybody. I mean, we just, you know, it's all about vibrations. And, you know, we feel like is that if we can just realize that we're way showers, There's always someone like, even like, again, with Asea, it's like, interesting, the person that signed us up for Asea, we knew he was not going to be like the person that's going to help us. So we signed up with him because we liked him. He was a nice guy, lived locally with us. Nobody knows who he was. But the first conversation I had with him was like, look, you know what? Take me to your leader. I know you're not the person that's going to help me, and that's fine. But I want to know who's at the top. And he took me right to where we needed to go. And that was it. And I think people just need to not look at that. Oh, wow, that person's doing all this. It's like, hey, you did it. So, if you don't mind, help me understand how you did it. We start to think in terms like that. I believe we're going to start to really manifest. I think people who start to think about things like, that person's got more than me, I believe they will no longer think about that, because all of a sudden things will be shown to them and they'll start to connect at a spirit level, which is a much better way to live. It really is.
I so love everything about that. And Brice, you and I have talked a lot about coincidences, synchronicities, that this is the universe giving you a nudge. This plays out a lot when people are looking at opportunities for finances. And do you listen to that nudge? Do you listen to that synchronicity?
It's so interesting what you were saying, Jay. So my boyfriend has run a very successful Ashtanga Shala here in Atlanta for 25 years. He does very well. It's a very crowded business. And it's interesting, all this. I was thinking, Cindy, we know that the yoga world in Atlanta can be very competitive at times. And my boyfriend has said so many times, this is ridiculous. There's 6 million people in this city. There's enough for all of us to be successful. He has said that over and over again. But just recently, Jay, he got an email from a newly authorized teacher in another state. And she reached out to him because of that, because she knew he was an old student of Batabi Joyce and he had had a successful shala for 25 years, which is really hard to do when it's a style specific studio. And she wanted to know how he did it. And you know what? My boyfriend's reaction was like, here's my phone number. Give me a call. I'll talk you through everything. So people are receptive. People are absolutely receptive to helping other people when they honestly come to them and say, I've noticed that you really seem to know what you're doing when it comes to the business. And that's hard too, right, Cindy? Like, especially I say Cindy and us, because we work in like a healing environment. And for me, it's interesting, as you guys are talking, I'm thinking like, I've laughed with Jay. I'm like, I need a Jay in my life, because when it comes to money, sometimes I'm like, la, 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 like, I don't even want to talk about it, And so I need someone like Jay that's going to be like, here's the strategy, right? And I think we find that a lot, even in our industry, Cindy, because so many people love what they do that they kind of forget sometimes, or they don't feel like they need to like charge for it, So it's hard. But yeah, I think if somebody's watching this right now and they're starting to feel that, wait a minute, there's something to this conversation. And I think that is the universe nudging you. And as you guys are talking as well, I'm sitting here thinking about like the significance of money, because all money is like glorified paper, really. That's all it really is. But it means, what it symbolizes is like your self-worth, your ability to take care of yourself. And I know Cindy spoke about this last week too. And I think, for me, especially in my own experience in this life, growing up in a pretty wealthy family and growing up in private schools and nice vacations, I had a very different perception of life as a child than other kids did. But as I become an adult, and especially going through my own self-work in my own practice for all these years, we always laugh that the more work you do, the more of a minimalist you become. So you really start to shed a lot of like all the extra clothes and purses, and you start to become very much a minimalist. But that doesn't mean we don't still want abundance. We want that abundance to be able to rescue more dogs, to be able to travel more. It's just the priority shift and change. And so if this conversation is triggering something in the person watching right now, good, I'm glad, because you're worth it. You're worth doing the hard work. I want everybody to understand that, like, you are worth all the tears and all the hard work. If you don't believe that, I'm telling you right now, you're worth it. And second of all, it's going to open up, when you start to go on this journey with your relationship to money, it's going to open up so much more for you to explore about yourself. So much more for you to heal within yourself. And I know I quote you a lot, Cindy, because you said many times, you're like, I don't want to pick up any more karma. Like, I want to shed what I got this. I don't want to bring any more to my next life. Right. So it's giving you that opportunity to really, when you're studying your own self, your own patterns when it comes to your relationship with money, you're gonna get to know yourself at a much deeper level, right? It's gonna open up so much more for you to heal and to understand about who you are. And again, you're worth it. Like, if you don't believe you're worth it, I can't convince you of that. You have to understand that for yourself. But as a human being, you are worth it to be able to. And you're right. There's enough in this world. Not one human being is here on this planet by mistake. That's my belief. Every single person on this planet plays a part in this collective game. That I like how Jay also, and I love that, because Jay often talks about, like, this life we're in is like a video game, right? And if we're able to look at that and that sense of, like, okay, so Marnie Alton says it that way. There's no obstacles. It's just a puzzle. It's just a puzzle you got to solve now. If you take the power away from that scary thing and you just make it a puzzle that you've got to solve, then it becomes a lot less daunting to do the work. And I will say too, Jay, you talked about not going to the people you're emotionally like your parents or something, because you don't take the advice so seriously. We say the same thing in the yoga world. I'm not allowed to teach my my partner. I'm not allowed to teach my family, my friends. Like, I can't teach them, because you don't. When you have a personal, complex relationship with someone, the advice sometimes does not sink in like it does when it's coming from someone who's not emotionally invested in your life. It's like a therapist, right? Therapists aren't emotionally invested in your life, and their advice sinks in, and your partner's like, I've been telling you that. And you're like, but the therapist said it one time and you got it. So
yeah. Such good advice. And I will post on my Instagram tomorrow what I've spent my latest bonus on, because if anyone now sees what I've done to my guinea pig shed, you will be amazed. My guinea pigs have rumps. They've got an upper level. They've got an outside bit. It makes me so happy. So there's a lot of benefits from actually, abundance. You can play it forward and help so many of whatever your passion is. Mine happens to be animals. Other people will be other things, whatever is for you. So I've loved this conversation. It's always a really, really good reminder for me. Can we go around the screen and just sort of say, right, action tips, get started? If someone's saying this, we've covered a little bit of it, but where would you like them to start, Cindy?
Well, besides doing internal work and all that, something that you can think about with, this is advice that I've found useful for me, especially if you're thinking about, like, the work that you're doing. And if you think of money as it's an exchange system, it's our exchange system that we have right now. And then you also talk about the word service, right? Like, what can you offer? Is to offer something really, really, really valuable that someone actually wants to pay for. And how can you do it your absolute best? I think when I was able to really refine that and have the confidence to step into that, even with the yoga teaching and getting really clear about my niche and the people that I wanted to serve, and part of whatever my gifts and talents are that could reach those certain people, and then get really clear about what I'm wanting to offer. Okay, this is actually what people are paying. What would people pay for? Like, what do people want to pay for, and what am I selling that people want to pay for? So I know that I'm selling, health that people want, well-being. I know I'm selling, like, get your mind, get really clear on your mind. I know that I'm selling also, like, a community where people can come together and, talk about the things that they want to talk about and feel safe. I know that I'm selling a very safe and comfortable environment for people to want to do that kind of work, because to do that kind of work can feel very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I want to also offer, like, my actual intelligence and wisdom and knowledge about the body. Okay, this is how you can get healthy here and here and here. These are the things that you can do, and and offering them exercises. This is what you can do. These meditations and things that you can do. And then just getting more refined on my niche. So that's what I do with the yoga studio. But then I have the other part, that's the mystery school, where I speak very specifically then to the healers, like the people that want to become healers, or the spiritual seekers who want to awaken, because that's like a whole nother vibe, and that niche gets smaller and smaller, right? But then getting as clear as possible of how can I serve them and what can I do to offer my absolute best, as clear as possible. So I'm offering them value, that I'm offering a value. I'm offering them a service, like a service that they do want to exchange their money. Because if we think about, our money, we earned our money. Our money means something to us. Our money is like important to us. And so if I'm asking someone to spend their well-earned money on me, then I want to make sure that I'm offering them something where they feel like, oh, that was a value, that was worth it. And so that's like the mental work that I had to do to start to get more clear, as far as like as an entrepreneur and someone who offers a service, is getting confident in my ability to also share that and know that that I'm going to give my absolute best, and that my students or my clients, they feel like I give them my absolute best, because I want to offer this service. I want to help you. This is like part of my dharma. This is, what I do. So I don't know if that answers your question,
absolutely.
Catherine.
I think so important, because everyone's got a gift, and then I'm smiling, and you're going to find out why for when I get to my bit, because it's very synchronicity what you've just said. Jay, what about you? What would your tip be?
My tip would be the fact that people are watching. You've already started, so congratulations. The fact that they're sitting here watching us means that you're in the game. You're ready for something right now. What I would do as a tip, kind of tagging on what Cindy says, is that I'd kind of take this opportunity to let you know that the universe has been knocking on your door, and now go find something you're thinking you want to do, and whatever that thought is, I would start the practice of that thought. And what I mean by that is this: let's say, for example, you want to be a psychic medium, for example. Start putting yourself out there and be like, hey, I'm giving free readings, okay? And do it just for the exercise of getting that feeling going, that whole thing, and next thing you know, you may do 20 free readings, and everybody's asking you about what the planets are. Now you've been able to tighten from being a psychic medium to an astrologer. So because the people that you do that with, they start to actually, they start to teach you what it is that you're supposed to do. So for me, it was always, when we sold our insurance agency and money lending and went in the internet, we're like, oh, what the hell are we going to do now? We don't know nothing. So we just started to talk to people and interview people. And next thing you know, there was this concept I'd never heard about, which was so fascinating to me, which was something called a life coach. And my question was, wait a minute, I don't need a degree for that? And people pay for that? I'm like, how do I do that? So I started to talk to people and be like, hey, let me try this. I'll talk to you. And through that whole exercise I learned what people wanted. There started to become a common theme. Well, I need help in this. And I would talk to a certain number of people, and there was always a common denominator. So that in turn for me created a business for that. You see what I mean? So it was literally getting, for me, call it market research, call it having the, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it was like, the best way for me to find out what to do is to ask the people what they want. And for me, that's what I did. So you're watching this, you're there, now start asking people what they want. They'll tell you, and then they tell you, then you start to create a business behind it. Then you start to attract people that are in that business that are ready to help you. Then those people that are ready to help you now want to form alliances with you. Next thing you know, you've gone from here to here. It's the strategy play out of this thing. But I would say do it again. I want to congratulate people that stay on this. These are not the conspiracy type, doom is gloom shows. These are the ones that are like, not the easiest thing to communicate for people, because it's actually asking people to confront the inner self, So again, for those who stick it out and go through this, I do really congratulate you and wish you all the love in the world.
Love it. Love it. Brice, what about you?
I have two things. Of course, my go-to because I believe in it so much. Take time for you every day to get quiet, go for a walk, get your blood pumping so that you can actually be aware with what you are telling you. The body keeps the score. When you exercise is the great template to do, to let your thoughts come up so that you're aware with what you're working with where your limitations lie within your thoughts. So that's always my go-to. And taking that time, even just 30 minutes a day you don't have to be an Olympic athlete, just go take a walk for 30 minutes and just let yourself have time for you so that you're clear-headed and so that you can continue this process. My second piece of advice, and this comes from, I feel like my late grandmother was like telling me, that reminding me of this story as you guys were speaking, is to know your worth. There was a story, my mom's mom, in the South, it's really common to get portraits done of your house. People have house portraits of these old, beautiful Southern. And my grandmother had a couple of them done. And there's a story my grandmother used to tell where she had this girl do a portrait of their house, a friend's daughter who was new in the art world. And she brought my grandmother the portrait. My grandmother pulled her checkbook out back in the day when we wrote checks and said, okay, how much? And she said, oh, 500 or something. I don't know what the price was. And my grandmother goes, absolutely not. You are worth way more than that. You've got to know your worth. I'm doubling it. And so my grandmother, so know your worth. Don't undersell yourself. Like, know your value. I know because I know Cindy off camera, I see her in her Shala and her mystery school. She's offering a lot, right? She's offering a lot for the students. I feel the same way when I'm teaching. I try to really give as much as I can to the group that I have at that moment. So know your worth and your intelligence as well. The work, the research, as Jay was saying, all the time that you put into owning your own craft and being, as Alan Watts says, over time you become the master of that discipline, and know that value. People come to you already because they believe that people come to Cindy because they know she has something to offer them. They know there's value there. And so don't ever underestimate your worth. Don't ever undercharge because you don't feel worthy enough to have that you're not enslaved to people, right? You're not enslaved. And when people come to your business or they come to you, they're expecting to exchange with you, and I know from a business perspective, if somebody is struggling financially, but wants to work with you, small businesses will always work out payment plans or something with somebody. So don't ever fear making your prices what they are worth. So I that would be my second advice. Don't undersell yourself.
Brilliant. And I'm going to finish off. And I was really laughing when you were explaining what you were explaining, Cindy, because if anyone's watching this, each of the four of us offer support and help to people in our own different way. And you're going to hear more about that in forthcoming shows. I am just launching. I'm not giving the official launch today, but I'm launching exactly what Cindy was talking about. I'm really passionate about entrepreneurs in the holistic health, healing profession, whether you're working with animals or humans. I've been there, done that, and I know how to really get you out in the world, because at a time when everyone's looking for solutions, the world needs you. And there's a lot of really talented people there that are not able to get there for whatever the blockages are now. So I'm there. I'm going to be offering a package starting in October to help people. You'll hear more about that coming out. But each of the four of us, all our contact details will be below. If you're, as Jay said, if you're listening to this and you want to start somewhere, reach out to one of us. I'll make sure everyone's details are below. Reach out with whoever you're resonating with and open up a conversation, because Jay, you've said it loads of times. We have to ask the universe, we have to ask our hearts, and then we have to be brave enough to go out and ask. And when you ask, you will receive. So there's lots more coming from all four of us. Contact details are below. Please go out and reach your dreams, because we can all do it, every single one of us, in whatever level you want to. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Don't set your dreams and aspirations based on someone else, but know what yours are, and don't let anyone tell you they're not achievable. Thank you so much, all of you. Please let us know in the comments below what you think. Do you like this format? What you'd like to hear more of? And please do reach out to any one of the four of us if you feel so drawn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. My goal is to inspire as many people as I can to live their best lives, to stay curious and to raise their consciousness and that of the collective. So to do this, I need to reach as many people as possible, and this needs your help. If you feel drawn, would you be willing to share your favourite episode with 5 different people? This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. If you feel drawn to do that, I will be very, very grateful. All the links and discount codes where applicable for all the products that I support are on my 2 websites, catherineedwards.life and catherineedwardsacademy.com. All of the products are personally tried and tested by me, my family, and my clients. And finally, please do press the follow or subscribe button, depending which platform you're listening on. And above all, stay curious and stay free.